And then I bowled a half tracker, bounces perfectly on the seam, it bounces up to his head, like rips right up, and the dude ducks, and the whole team's like, whoa.
So did you get him out?
No, just to threaten him. I got him out 2 balls later.
Oh my goodness. LBW.
Mitchell Stark's wet dream.
Isn't that right?
Yeah, right. Sure.
Should we start?
Yeah, you've already started. Hello and welcome to the Dead Game Bear podcast. My name's Sean and joining me as always is the one and only Dante Boffa, Mr. Boffa man. How are we?
I'm so good, Sean. I'm so good. I'm feeling a bit caffeinated.
Good.
With this Coca-Cola. What's the opposite of like product placement? Because you can't see it, but how about this?
You love the ASMR bits. That was really not enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah, I just did, before I came, I did watch an episode of All Caps NBA where they did the analysis AMR. And usually that's one of my favourite segments. I think it's really funny, but they did it with this guy from Utah and he was a bit of a fucking flop.
Who was it? Because I tell you, because
it was some white guy.
John Locke?
Nah.
For the listeners, Dante and I completely disagree on this. I hate ASMR, like the analysis MMR, so much that I skip through it on YouTube. I see the little bracket and I skip ahead.
Wow. Thank God for timestamps.
Yeah.
I think it's really...
Don't say that. Our editor doesn't put timestamps in the pod.
I think it's pretty funny. But yeah, this guy from Utah, not saying that it's a general comment about all people from Utah, although you definitely could read it that way if you were so inclined. He just wasn't funny. He was unprepared. His whole shtick was doing things exclusively like on the microphone. Like he made a joke about opening a can of worms, and instead of getting a can opener and opening a can, he just rubbed the can opener on the microphone. It's like, well, that's not what cans and can openers really sound like. It's a completely artificial construct of what a can opener sounds like. Meanwhile, Jason Concepcion, God bless him, he's talking about lighting the fuse, and he gets a box of matches and he strikes one, and it's like, well, that makes perfect sense.
Look,
and audially, it was an interesting experience, which is why I like the segment, because how much basketball commentary is there where you know exactly what's going to happen? Someone's talking, they're going to keep talking. This, you just have no idea what's going to happen. It introduces a little bit of randomness, a bit of chaos.
So that's what I like about All Caps NBA, because it is random and it is different and it is innovative, and that's why it won the Emmy for a digital innovation.
Sounds good.
Well, when I was with The Ringer, I just like innovate elsewhere. I've got my time from ASMR and I've got my time for my basketball chats.
The Venn diagram for ASMR and basketball is 2 circles.
I feel like a boomer whenever I'm listening to it. When I skip it, I go, that bloody's wasting my bloody time again. Because it just takes longer to get to the point. So it'll be halfway through a point.
Yeah, but there's no point though.
Yeah, that's how much does that suck.
No,
there's no jokes, there's no got-yous.
I think in modern society, there's too much emphasis on a point, on getting from point A to point B, whereas there should be a bit more emphasis on a meander, a wander. Where are we going? I don't know. Are we going to find anything? I'm not sure. Let's just see what happens.
Not the destination.
Let's just see what happens. And I think that there needs to be a bit of a cultural reorganization to re-emphasize the meander. And you could look at it. You could look at All Caps as taking a very important first step on behalf of Western society at restructuring the way that we look at things. So,
well, speaking of restructuring the way we look at things, before we get into this week's pod, just like to say that on thedeep2.com, yes, it's that simple, Dante, on thedeep2.com, there's an article up there from Alessio Conte talking about the Lakers conundrum, and while it is titled a Lakers conundrum, it is very much a Russell Westbrook conundrum, and it's a nice little follow-up from Alessio's article that he wrote for us when he was on Medium, when we were on Medium, talking about how Russell Westbrook was changing the way centers play. This is obviously down the end of that Houston season where he started playing center, and there was obviously that massive game where he was literally like guarding Rudy Gobert, and it was awesome, and it was fruity, and it was funky, and they're pushing the boundaries a lot like All Caps NBA, and now Aless looks at how it can be replicated to the Los Angeles Lakers. So give that a read on thedeep2.com.
Isn't it crazy that 2 seasons ago, we had people writing about how Russell Westbrook's shit, and now he's still shit. Not that the Less's Houston article was about Russell Westbrook being shit, but obviously the context behind Russell Westbrook playing center was that he had been shit as a point guard. And 2 seasons later, 2 teams later, and here we are. He's taking another title contending team and almost single-handedly ruining their chances at contention. Wow.
Yeah. Well, and as one thing, Chief Technology Officer and friend of the program, Sean Conlon, points out, this is the first Lakers article on the whole entire website. How awesome is that?
You know why that is? Because we're not sellouts. We're not covering the big markets.
Until now.
Yeah, until we realise that Knicks get clicks. But you know what? We'll cover the Torontos, the Charlottes,
the Warriors,
Phoenixes.
the small markets.
Little markets.
Well, while we talk about, picking the small niche topics, let's talk about Mba Awards, something that doesn't get enough coverage in today's society, especially not for the next 3 months. So how about we get ahead of that and give our award predictions, what we think is going to happen for the rest of the year before, the Low Post does it and before Brian Windhorst does it. And here, Dante and I are sitting here with our acoustic notes. We've both written them down.
You mean analog?
Yeah. So we've got get a little bit of a wow factor, but we're going to break down the major awards and the awards that we care about the most, and throw in a couple of funny ones there just to see what's going to happen.
Because we do have a laugh here at the podcast.
What is this freaking basketball podcast? Have I touched on anything there? Should we just go ahead with it?
I think we should just jump in.
All right. Well, before we do, I'm going to awkwardly stand up and move this mirror that keeps shaking. This is going to be a beautiful audio experience.
Yeah, you really are on the other side of the room now.
Because we still upload this in stereo, so people can hear me on the other side of their ears.
All right, well, the mirror now is no longer at risk of rattling. So let's get into it.
Or breaking, thank fuck.
Yeah, okay. Well, you the homeowner, have more to worry about the mirror.
Oh, no, I was talking about the bad luck.
Oh, is that bad luck if a mirror breaks? I thought it was just annoying to clean up.
No. Bad luck to break.
Why? Probably some stupid reason.
Like walking under a
ladder.
Walking under a black cat.
Mate, done. A black cat on a ladder. You may as well just mail it in.
Sounds like a fucking Fairly Odd Parents episode.
Does it? You remember doing like titles, or are you talking about like the plot?
No, the plot. I remember like Timmy just wished bad luck on this one kid in his class.
Timmy, the main guy.
Yeah,
I just remember Wanda and Cosmo.
Yeah, and he's wished bad luck, and then all of a sudden, all these like tropes came out, and I was like, all in one. That's super bad luck.
Damn.
All right, so the MVP. Who is going to win? Does the final third of the season have much sway into it, and who do you think will win?
I think the final third of the season does have heaps of sway into it, because it's safe to say, and I think we're both in agreement, that it's Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, and Giannis are the 3 contenders. Mm-hmm. I got into my thinking on why Giannis isn't a contender of the caliber of the other 2 last week. Mm-hmm. Mainly because the Bucks have had their 3 stars healthy for essentially the entire season, when neither Jokic or Embiid have had that. And the Bucks are currently a 6th seed. Mm-hmm. So unless the Bucks make a real strong push into the top 3, which they could because the East is so bunched up, I don't think that his case, having had the superstar help there the entire season, is as strong. I think it is going to end up coming down to the 2, but I think it's going to be Embiid.
Yeah.
Just because the narrative is so strong there. The narrative is already with Embiid, and if they can, with Harden, go on to have greater success, and like finish top 2 in the East, I think what's going to happen is people are going to say, yeah, Joel Embiid had an amazing season and they finished 2nd in the East, and they're not going to weigh that. They're going to weigh that more heavily than like Jokic took the star and role player list, the basically like talent bereft Nuggets to the 5 seed. I think the Embiid narrative and the success and the dominance that he's shown is going to outweigh that. I disagree, and I think that it should be Jokic, but at least in mainstream media circles, like outside of NBA nerd circle jerks, it seems like Embiid has the the inside track.
And I think if Embiid won last season, would probably be saying the same thing about Jokic this season. Do you agree? As I get you on your final sip.
Yeah, I do agree. Because it's strange to be talking about like voter fatigue
after 1 year.
After 1 year, but Jokic is also something of a lightning rod in many ways because he's unconventional. He's a passing big. Obviously, he's an elite scorer. He's an elite rebounder, but he's not like an imposing defensive presence. He's kind of a bit more skill and finesse. Whereas Embiid is like this classic Hakeem, Ewing, David Robinson, Tim Duncan type figure. Just your defensive anchor, like offensively elite post scorer. In a way that's more recognizable as what a big man should be to a lot of the more conservative elements in the NBA media. So seeing someone like that succeeding, I think there maybe is a tendency to preference that over something new and different and not altogether familiar.
So
if that makes sense.
It does, but like he won last year. But moving on from that point,
but it's almost like he won last year, but like in spite of, he wasn't like, you know.
But still, like guys like Chuck and Shaq are like, you know, I love Jokic. He just because when he does get a mismatch, he does just abuse it. And even when maybe he's got Zubac on him, and he's like, well, I'm just better than you, and still has the post. You know what I mean? Like
Zubac is when any good NBA player gets smashed up on Zubac, they're like, okay, we're going at you.
He's just replacement level. It's like, okay, if you can beat this dude, then yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. He's the barometer.
He's the bronze standard.
Yeah.
But I think the rest of the season does matter a lot because, you know, you look at the two guys in Jokic and Embiid, they're both the 5 and 6 seeds, I believe, or the 4 and 5 seeds in their conferences. And obviously you said that the Bucks there are super bunched up, and the Bucks are currently somewhere in the conference.
The 76ers is actually 3rd currently, and the Nuggets are 6th.
I think, are they all 2.5 games behind?
Yeah, so there's 2.5 that separates the Heat and the Bulls, who are tied for first from the 76ers, Cavs, and Bucks.
Okay. I think like if any of these three teams make a run, and I think the Denver Nuggets won't make a run, but if any of these three teams do make a run and then they end up with the 1 seed at the end of the year, especially in the East, because, you know, Phoenix might have just run away with the 1 seed in the West, that's going to look awesome. So if Giannis comes in, averages 50 points for the rest of the season and makes the 1 seed, and we're all like, oh my god, he turned around in the last half, and the last half obviously is going to be the most recent thing in our memory, so we're going to say Giannis is going to win it. But then again, you could have Embiid, who's now just turned Steph Curry into James Harden, and he also has a chance to run away with the number 1 seed, and it's like, okay, he's clearly the best player on the best team, just give it to him. And I think that's an argument against Jokic, and so be it. I think it is just going to be Embiid's year, which is like pretty upsetting to just sort of concede that now, because it doesn't leave much room for debate.
I think it'll be close. I don't think it'll be a runaway by any stretch, because
it'll be a runaway if someone just gets the number 1 seed and has it for the rest of the year.
Yeah, but even in adding Harden, like I don't necessarily know that the 76ers are like elevated above everybody else, especially teams like the Heat and the Bulls. So the Heat have been kind of like injury riddled the whole season. Jimmy, Kyle Lowry have missed time. Bam's missed most of the season. They're all back healthy. The Bulls have Lonzo coming back from a torn meniscus soon, hopefully. So we'll see how he looks. But Caruso will be back soon, you know, within a month. Levine has been kind of like in and out. He'll be back and healthy soon. So the Bulls and the Heat at the top will be renewed. And then if we're talking about a Giannis stretch run, the Cavs are up there. The Celtics, the hottest team in the league, coming. Like, I don't necessarily think that the 76ers is just going to like waltz to the number 1 seed.
But if they do, I reckon it's done.
If they do, I reckon it's done. But the more nuanced take on that would be that, like, when Embiid was in a similar situation to Jokic, even a slightly better situation to Jokic, which he obviously is in, Jokic's situation is about as bad as it gets. They were able to do similar things, and it was only with the addition of a superstar teammate that they really, like, you know, gallivanted off to the 1 seed. is an indication that James Harden deserves a lot of the credit for the final third performance, the performance in the final third of the regular season, rather than Embiid. So anyway, I think it would be in that circumstance that would be the lazy analysis.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
I'll cop that. But yeah,
I don't mean to you. I mean to the NBA intellectual elite. No, you can't. You got to rotate. You can't. Cognoscenti's got to be once every couple of episodes.
And I think it will be such a shame because and we're going to get this again. So maybe Jokic can win next year, but it's going to be such a waste of just a beautiful Jokic season for him not to win the MVP. Like he's played leaps and bounds better than he did the season prior, and maybe that's because he doesn't have two other stars to pass the ball to, so he has to take a lot of the load. But I was rewatching an analysis on his beautiful game against the Clippers where they were down by like 15 points, and then Nuggets came storming back, and Jokic in the fourth quarter and overtime scored like the last 28 out of 30 points, scored or assisted on 28 of the last 30 points, and it was just like absolutely incredible. That's the one where he was getting doubled, and then he just sort of turned around, still a double, turned around, and then just flung a cross-court pass to Aaron Gordon for the game winner, because it's like that's clearly not a hard enough pass for him to make.
You made a pass like that. You made a pass like that on Monday night at basketball.
Yeah.
Out of the post, cross-court, open shooter, splash.
Totally not my best game, but
you look pretty good out there setting those screens.
That nobody used.
Yeah, well, they're a couple that got turned away, but you're setting them well. You're setting them well.
Yeah, pretty lackluster game, man. I was hoping to do a little bit more.
Yeah, you had a couple of big rebounds in there as well. A couple of tips off free throws where I was like, well,
this is coming from Dante, who had a cheeky 10 points running the break. Dude, Jack has been killing for a fucking running mate for weeks, man. He just filled that niche.
Can do one thing, run.
I just want to finish up the MVP chat by saying, if the Warriors, who are 6.5 games behind the Phoenix Suns right now, who are the Phoenix Suns who don't have Chris Paul, if the Warriors go on a run without Draymond Green for the next couple of weeks, it will be because Steph Curry has recaptured his early season form. And if the Warriors can get the 1 seed, I'm putting a lot of stock into winning and a lot of stock into the 1 seed, which I think is fair. But if the Warriors can run away with it and can try and really make a push to get home court for every single part of the whole entire season, I think there's a chance there for Steph Curry.
I don't think there's a chance.
Really?
I think that his struggles over what is now like a 2-month period. 2-month period are probably going to be enough to exclude him. He's having his worst shooting season in like 10 years. And we also already know what a Steph MVP season looks like.
And this isn't
it. Like, we know what Steph at his absolute best looks like, and this is not it.
It could be 95%, 90%.
Well, there's a lot of if, buts, and maybes, but at the moment, this is a lot, like 80%. What he's thought he's done on the totality of the year, 80% of like his best work.
If we count the All-Star game towards season records, just don't underestimate how loud the bay gets up, man.
The bay, much like the bark, gets loud.
All right, let's move on to most improved player. Obviously, me, being from the Bay, was very loud shouting for Jordan Poole from the top of the roofs. It's not going to be Jordan Poole. I'm willing to concede that now after 2/3 of a season where he hasn't been the most improved player. He might be the most improved Warrior, but not the most improved player. I've got it down to 2.5 players.
Okay.
Darius Garland, Ja Morant, and half players DeMar DeRozan, who I think has already proven that he can be this good, and his sort of improvement's more of a situation than an improvement himself. But between the two, I would pick Ja Morant to win it over Darius Garland. What have you got for
you know DeMar between game 40 and game 60 of this season, which coincides with Levine, Caruso, and Lonzo being out. Averaged 35 points a game.
Yeah, and was he shot like over 50%? And it's like first thing since Wilt. Tell me you're in the dog days without telling me you're in the dog days. You get a graphic that says he's the first player since Wilt to go through a 7-game stretch shooting above 50% while averaging 35 or more points.
No, the ultimate fucking dog days. No, that's just elite. The Thaddeus graphic from his
Indie.
Yeah. No, the ultimate one is circa 2018 and me in like April, like on like April 2nd, there's like a week left of the NBA season. And I'm like, man, from January 31st onwards, Josh Jackson's actually shot 44% from three. So, you know, maybe his shot's not broken. And me just being like, yeah, his shot's not broken.
Where is he right now?
He's probably in Detroit.
I think...
Guangdong, maybe?
Did he get traded at the deadline?
Basketball player for the Sacramento Kings. Yeah, that fits.
That's right, because they added him and said all NBA second team.
Yeah,
all rookie. All
that
rookie.
was the saddest thing. It was the welcome photo, and it was like the caption was like 2017-18 All NBA rookie second team, and it had the green tick, and it's like, wow, get fucked.
Who have you got for most improved?
I've got down to Garland and Morant also, but the case for them. The case for them is essentially the same thing. It's a guard who's increased their output by about the same amount, dragged their team, being the main engine behind dragging their team into like serious, significant playoff contention, being rewarded with an all-star berth. It's just that Garland has gone from not that good to really good, and Morant's gone from really good to superstar. And the jump, I think, to get from really good to superstar is harder than the jump from not that good to really good. So
that is the exact same thing I wrote down.
Yeah, well, there, yeah.
Shake my hand, D.
Great minds and certain things like that.
All right, let's move on to Can you intro the best team in the final third? Well, maybe actually
what?
no.
Does it need to be? Does it need to be introed?
I was going to say this is actually the one I wanted to intro. You can intro the next one, but I want to call this the Utah Jazz Award because it's always after the All-Star break. The Utah Jazz go on a run and like opponents will shoot like 10% from the floor. Maybe they'll shoot like 56% from three. There's always some amazing thing, whether it be Kenta gets traded and Rudy Gobert comes in and does his thing, or whether it be Donovan Mitchell averages 2 more points. And it always seems to be the Utah Jazz. So this is looking at the team that the post All-Star surge, who's going to have the best surge, where we're going to look back and be like, wow, the team was a little bit questionable on the fence, but then after the All-Star break, they really like cleaned it up or finished the job. I've got 4 teams here, which probably is cheating. Are we just picking one or?
No, it's your award. We can discuss.
All right, we can discuss. So I've got Boston, Philly, Utah, and Atlanta. Got Boston because they've sort of already gone on this post All-Star run in the past 2 weeks, so I just see them continuing on because there's something's clicked and they figured it out when Robert Williams plays. Philly trading for James Harden really helps being a good basketball team when you didn't have James Harden before. Utah simply because of the namesake, and Atlanta because if Atlanta don't make a run, this is a little bit icky, and there will be no question marks for them for the rest of the season. No major injuries, so hopefully they can just win games and be good at basketball now. But more of a question. Well, what do you think?
I think my laptop is having an absolute seizure right now. Wow. Just going to get in there and save my uni work once that happens. Oh my goodness. Wow, tech difficulties. This is actually a bit concerning.
Is the audio still recording?
Yeah, bloody hope so. Yeah, we're fine. Audacity is like a Nokia phone. It's built to survive anything. Oh, and now we're back. I had just ducked onto Tankathon to see the remaining strength of schedule to see if I could get some assistance with deciding who might have an easier path. But that's what set my laptop off, so I'm not going to do that again.
Well, here it is. The Atlanta Hawks have the 5th easiest schedule for the rest of the season.
I see Phoenix Suns there with the 6th easiest. Well, I was going to say Boston and Brooklyn were going to be my 2 nominations. Boston because they're the hottest team in the league over the last month to month and a half. They've got the best defense in the league over that time and for the entire season. And the Nets because they've hopefully taken the first tentative steps to extricating themselves from that sticky situation. Hopefully you get Simmons back within a fortnight. Hopefully Kyrie can play. We'll talk about that in a little while if he might be able to play. But the very least, they got 22 games left, and 12 of them are on the road. So minimum, you're getting like 60% of your 60% of your games with Kyrie, and there's nowhere to go but up from here. Hopefully, you get KD back as well, healthy when he comes back. There's nowhere to go.
And Goran Dragic.
Yeah, that was so weird.
Yeah.
Talking about it's a fait accompli that he's going to be a buck.
Yeah, I did say that, didn't I? And then they got Javon Carter.
Yeah,
it was a net.
Who was a net? Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. I think that the Nets are in a position where even if they just right the ship, it's going to seem like a surge because they were playing so well, and then they fell off so hard. They lost like 9 games in a row. They're 2-8 in their last 10. That if they can kind of just get back to playing, like if they can win like 14 of their last 22 games, it's going to seem like, whoa, this team went on a surge, when in reality it's just what we expect from the Nets.
Yeah. Regression to the mean because of injuries.
Currently, if they could win 14 of their last 22, they'd finish with 45 wins.
That's bad.
Yeah. That's what happens when you lose 9 games in a row.
Yeah, that's not good for a
Kevin. You know who else has lost that many games in a row? I'm going to put some numbers in perspective for you. Just since we're talking about this. 10 games ago, the Charlotte Hornets were 28-22, and now they're 29-31.
Wow.
Which is quite bad.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in conclusion, I think my nomination would be the Celtics just because it seems like what's going to stop them. And the Nets. The only thing that gives me pause about that is that because everything is so tight, like everyone's so tightly bunched at the top. So either at the top in the East, 2 things are possible. One, maybe 2 teams are going to really slip up and like slip out of that race, and like the Hawks or the Nets are going to sneak in, or that block of teams that are all within 2 to 3 games of each other is just going to remain, and it's going to be really difficult for the teams below to like poke their way through. Remains to be seen which one it is.
Well, we rarely see like a seeding battle with 4 teams.
Well, man, like you rarely see 3/4 of the way through the season that there's 5 teams within 2.5 games at the top.
Yeah.
You just look at the West where there's 6.5 games difference between 1 and 2, a further 1.5 between 2 and 3, and then there's 4 between 3 and 4.
Yeah,
like there's no bunching whatsoever. No one's really in danger of losing their seed currently.
Yeah. I already know that I'm worried about the the second round against Memphis. Do you want to go from there to talk about Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving?
Yeah, we may as well.
One of our questions is who will play more home games, Ben Simmons or Kyrie Irving? So what did you say? There's 22 more games remaining.
22 more games. 10 of them are at home.
So now there was a change with the vaccine mandate, which coming from Shams Charania of The Athletic, which the Nets are hopeful will mean that Kyrie Irving can play, but we don't know when play home games. So we don't know when Kyrie Irving will be able to play home games, but we know that Ben Simmons, who has been sitting out for a non-physical injury, will be able to play whenever he's mentally ready. So, I mean, it should be right after the All-Star break. And there was a report last week that said he'll play in the coming weeks. But I'm a little bit cautious because you know how Ben Simmons has been fined like $19 million? That money isn't just completely lost and gone to the NBA, gone to the league office. It's actually sitting in purgatory at the moment. And because he's contested all of those fines, saying that he hasn't been playing for a legitimate reason. So that money's sitting there in purgatory. And then the NBA is eventually going to get around to going. I think it'll take like a year for them to review the reason for taking that money away, and then Ben Simmons' lawyers will say no, he didn't want to play. He literally couldn't play because of his mental issues. The NBA might argue against that. If he gets traded to Brooklyn and then plays immediately, that would make his case look a little bit softer in terms of whether could you not play because you were mentally ill, full stop, or could you not play in Philadelphia because you were mentally ill? Does the NBA really want to award someone back their money for using that as a reason? Because if they do that, it sets a precedent for other players who can be mentally ill in one state as opposed one team as opposed to another one. So it's a little bit of a grey area. So if Ben Simmons has a legal team in his ear saying, hey, maybe hold off for a little bit longer in Brooklyn, that'll like help our case a year from now when you try and get your money back, because it is about basketball, but do you want $19 million or not? So if he's got people saying that to him, and there's a indeterminate amount of time where it'll look more likely in a court of law, are we going to see that play out, or am I reading too much into it? And he's just going to play the first game after the All-Star break?
No, he's definitely not going to play the first game after the All-Star break. It's never seemed like that was the case. No. I was reading that he was weeks, not months away. So weeks is promising, but the saying that it's not months, that there needed to be some clarification that it wasn't going to be months, doesn't exactly scream he's ready to go. If he gets that money, oh my god, Australians get criticised for having tall poppy syndrome, but I just want to chop him down. I just want to chop Ben Simmons down. He shouldn't get that money. Anyway, we don't need to re-litigate that.
So who's going to play more games, home games?
I'm going to say Ben Simmons, because I did a bit of reading about the New York City mask mandate, and I read something on The Athletic. It wasn't from Chance, it was from someone else. But they included quotes like over a period of time from the New York City mayor. And his public statements about the mask mandate are literally like all over the place. It's like a stream of consciousness.
Vaccine,
the vaccine mandate. It's like a stream of consciousness. He's like, like when I first decided I wanted to do this, I was like, it's really great for public health, and we need strong communities, and we need everyone to be committed. But then I was like, maybe I don't want to do this. But then I was thinking, no, if I change the rules now, it'll look like a backflip, and we really don't want to send mixed messages. And then like a week later, he's like, yeah, I've been thinking about it, but I'm not sure that I fully want to commit. And it's like such a far cry from like the way that governments usually communicate. It's like press conference, press release. Here's what's happening. For some reason, he's just decided to bring us all into the mechanism of his mind.
Are these all tweets or interviews?
These are interviews that he's given, and it doesn't. He doesn't strike me as someone who's got a clear idea of what he's going to do. So I don't know if that vaccine mandate. I don't want to keep saying mask mandate. If that vaccine mandate is imminent, or if it's not, or if he says it's imminent, does that actually mean it's imminent? Like he seems like a bit of a wishy-washy character.
How good's that? I did the research on the Ben Simmons side, you did the research on the Kyrie side, and we are none the wiser.
Wow, that's what you call some good journalism. To sum it up, I think Ben Simmons, just because all he has to do
is play games,
is literally just get in game shape. And if he hasn't been keeping himself in game shape this entire time, I'm so mad. I'm already pretty mad at him, but I'll be so mad at him. All right, should we move on to the next one, which I will intro? This is my award.
You go.
It's following on from the best team in the final third. It's the biggest bottle in the final third, and bottling something is I love British Instagram. Bottling something is a British football terminology where it basically means fucking it up. You're up 2-0 in the 80th minute, you lose 3-2, you bottled it, that sort of thing. And in the spirit of the award, I want to say, what's the team that is what's the playoff aspiration? The playoff aspirational team that's going to slip away towards the end of the season, either slip into the play-in or slip into complete irrelevance.
Well, you've sort of brought a good point up before, and a bit like the Boston side of things. On the other side of the coin, you've got the Hornets, who have already been struggling mightily before reaching the All-Star break. So I'm going to say the Hornets, but to add a little bit of flavour in there as well.
You prepared for this one?
I didn't.
Well, I'll tell you who I've got. I've got the Hornets and I've got the Lakers, both of which are somewhat low-hanging fruit. The Hornets have been in the playoff race the entire season, and after the last month are now in the play-in, and with the Nets and the Hawks behind them, maybe not even gonna be in the play-in. The Lakers, read Alessa's article if you want to find out what's going on there. I'm not saying anything more about it. You can find that at thedeep2.com. It really is that simple. But the one that I want to throw in there as a smoky, talking about this block in the East, the team that I think is most likely to slip out of that top 6 in the East is the Cavs. Because I think they have the weakest roster. and they're so reliant on 3 players. And if you get any slippage from those 3 players doing all of the heavy lifting, one of whom is a rookie, 2 of whom are first-time All-Stars. Not to say that they're unreliable, but I'm just saying, like, you're not exactly looking at the Bucks being like, man, if Chris Middleton just suddenly goes into a slump, like, he's probably not going to suddenly go into a slump. But it's like, if you get 20% less from Garland or 20% less from Mobley, all of a sudden the Cavs are nowhere near as good. So I think that with like the Celtics, the Raptors, Nets kind of like nipping on the Cavs' heels, I think that they could slip into the play-in.
I actually had one for our next question, which is the biggest tank that I'm actually going to use here for the biggest bottle, which is the Portland Trailblazers, who are currently 25 and 34, 4 and 6 in their last 10, and have just torn it down, torn the ship apart.
You've misunderstood the sentiment of the bottle.
No, but the bottle is they want as good a pick as possible, and they've gone on a little bit of a mini streak here and have gone 500 since the trades. So
it's like a meta bottle.
So they might get into the play-in by accident, because right now they're the 10th seed and they're winning games. CJ Ellaby beat LeBron James the other day in an actually like what could be a massive game for standing purposes. So I could see Portland, who are just they always at the very worst like time to do so, they overperform and then sort of ruin their pick and ruin their assets. So I'm thinking maybe they overperform here, they bottle the tank, and all of a sudden, instead of trading the 4th pick just to build around Damian Lillard, they're trading the 15th pick.
Yeah, that's like a meta bottle. Yeah, that would be so Trailblazery, just so they can lose in one game in the play-in.
To LeBron. And LeBron will get an easier path to the 8th seed.
There's no team in the league that I feel more confident about LeBron just absolutely abusing than the Portland Trailblazers. Even the Rockets, I'm like, LeBron, not even necessarily because of the personnel. I'm just like spiritually. LeBron in the play-in is going to go for 43, 14, and 10 against the Blazers. That's what's going to happen.
Oh, do you remember when the Blazers, I think it was last year or the season before, when they had their grayscale jerseys, where it was just their normal home jerseys, but it was all grey? So instead of like the red and black and white, it was sort of like grey, where it was all supposed to be black. And it looks really cool, but it was like purposely trying to be bland. And it just wasn't a good look for a franchise that has been rather bland in the past couple of years and hasn't really done anything. You just know that they're not going to win the big games. They're going to lose, and Damian Lillard's going to be there for his whole career. But I think if they brought back those jerseys, it would be one of the most miserable situations to sit there, watch Trenton Watford and Fernie Simons, CJ Ellaby in grayscale jerseys. That would just be miserable. Have you got them up?
Nah.
Oh, a little bit of a peep show for the next question.
Just doing other stuff.
Shut up, short.
Don't mind me.
Do you want to move on to the next question?
Yeah, let's move on to the next question.
So similar to the biggest bottle, I've got the hardest tank. So a little bit like what the Toronto Raptors did last year, where instead of accidentally falling out, they go, hang on, we don't really care about the play-in, let's tank as hard as possible. Who have you got for the hardest tank for the rest of the season?
I've got a team that I'm not 100% sure they will, but they absolutely should. And that's Indiana Pacers. They've traded away their all-star for a 21-year-old, 22-year-old. Their roster is littered with like second-round pick undrafted guys. Miles Turner, maybe instead of coming back after the all-star break, that broken foot turns out to keep him out for the rest of the season. TJ Warren, don't rush yourself. You haven't rushed yourself in this entire process. Don't come back now. Malcolm Brogdon's been in and out. Let's just roll out Haliburton, Stevenson, Duarte, Buddy Hield, my boy, Jalen Smith, Sticks. And let's just, fuck around and lose some games. Because with all of those players coming back next season, if they got like a top 5 pick, a really good blue chip young player, you could then say they've got 2 blue chip young talents. If they wanted to pivot into a rebuild, they could. Otherwise, young players and like steady vets plus the return that they might get for any of those steady vets, you could either then try and take another playoff tilt in the retool mindset, or you'd be in a pretty promising position if you wanted to like actually rebuild. Like
actually rebuild in Indiana.
Well, if you've got Haliburton, I know Duarte is like 28 years old. If you've got Haliburton, Duarte, and then a top 5 pick in a draft that looks like there's going to be 4 or 5 players who are all kind of like worthy of that level of praise and nothing else after that. That's a pretty good place to start, especially when considering the assets that you could get in terms of draft picks and young players if you traded away Turner, Brogdon, Hield, or Warren.
Or Duarte in that conversation.
Or Duarte. Think about what you could get for Jalen Smith. A whole second-round pick, probably. They're in that perfect spot where they should do it, and the upshot of doing it is either like a quick retool on the fly and then we're back in the playoff contention next season, or if you want to go the other conceptual path, it'd be a great springboard for a team that. When was the last time they had a high pick, like a really high pick, like never?
It was the highest pick outside of Miles Turner was Rick Smith.
Yeah, so what we're talking 40 years ago. Yeah, and Miles Turner was like pick 9 or something.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Look, for the hardest tank in the final push, I think it, like it was last year, I think it'll be OKC. I think Shea's going to have some injury where he just can't play for the last 15 games. Josh Giddey might even get shut down, which would just be incredible.
Or Josh Giddey.
And then all of a sudden you're left with just an absolute poo-poo platter. But the team that I want to see do the tank, and who are in such a great position to do the tank, are the New York Knicks, who are currently 2 games behind the Wizards in the win column. They are 9 games below 500, and they've got the 4th hardest schedule for the rest of the season. This could be a very smart move by Leon Rose to say, hey, season doesn't matter, we're not going to make the playoffs. I, Sean Carroll, am extremely skeptical of them at the best of times, and while I don't think this is a regression to the mean, I think this is a regression from last season to the other side of the mean. I don't think this team has at all what it takes to win a championship. Like I said, I was pretty high on RJ Barrett, but I'm high on RJ Barrett as maybe the 2nd or 3rd best player in a championship team. I'm definitely not high on Julius Randle to be the best player in a championship team. So tank, the season doesn't matter. Everyone around you wants to be good. Most people around you want to be good. You will lose games, even if you try your hardest. Chuck it in the tank. See what might happen in terms of the Tibbs relationship deteriorating more, and maybe you could spin that as Tibbs doesn't want to be there, not you fired Tibbs, a little bit of a sneaky, and get a high pick. And New York, I would much prefer this New York team with RJ Barrett, young pick, and maybe re-signing Mitchell Robinson than making a push for the 10th seed and all of a sudden it's the 9th pick, not the 5th pick.
I think they are in a great position. I just can't see it happening because tanking is so antithetical to anything Tibbs has ever done. And ultimately, the coach is the one that's responsible for the product on the court. And they could organisationally say to Tibbs, tank, and he'd be like, maybe not.
He's done that in the past.
Yeah, he has done that in the past. I think the difference with other teams that might be looking to tank, obviously all of the worst teams in the league, so we're talking Rockets, Pistons, Magic, Thunder, all have really young coaches at the start of their deal, and there's no job security. There's no job issues there, job security issues there. Ownership says to the coach, hey, we want you to tank the last 20 games of the season. Don't worry, you're still contracted. You're going to be here next season. Even in Indiana, Rick Carlisle, maybe he doesn't want to tank. Maybe he doesn't want to do a rebuild. At least the Pacers can say to him if they ask him to tank, like, your job's not under threat. We're not going to look at this at the end of the season and say, wow, only 25 wins. That was terrible. Like, we understand. The Knicks, that's not the case because we discussed last week the discontent within the Knicks organization, the obvious disconnect between the front office and the coaching staff. So if Tibbs did agree to tank, you could very easily see him being scapegoated in the exact way that I just said the Pacers wouldn't do with Carlisle, where the Knicks end up winning 30 games and then they turn around and say, actually, we're the Knicks, winning 30 games is not acceptable for us, so you're out. And Tibbs knows that might be the possibility, so he's not going to do it. Even if he wasn't like diametrically opposed to the idea of tanking with every fibre of his being, I think as a strategic play, he would recognise that his job is too precarious to like risk giving them another bullet in the chamber. So they should tank.
But Tibbs.
I just don't.
Yeah. And we'll just mention it, not that it matters too much, but Kemba Walker and the Knicks have agreed that he will sit out for the rest of the season.
When he signed 2 years, $17 million deal, so it's $8.5 a year.
Yeah.
That sounded like great value.
Yeah.
A low-cost flyer.
But we should have known that no one in the league valued him.
I was just thinking about it today, though. I was like, surely you put some injury protection on that second year. Surely you make it like only partially guaranteed.
Yeah.
The fact that they didn't, it's like,
well, he's got that, and he's still getting paid $30 million from OKC.
They must have they must have done a medical and saying that it was a possibility that he's
$8 million risk.
There was an $8 million because now it's like he's like a mid-level albatross if he's not going to play next season.
Not that they're like impossible to get rid of, but
no, but you know who's
it's like yuck.
Who's taking?
I was also watching like a recap of that Toronto-Boston series in the bubble, the 2020 series. That was like the greatest chess match between Brad Stevens and Nick Nurse, and like Kemba was like a legitimate weapon in the bubble. Like Kemba was like the whole thing is like you have to do these pick and roll schemes because Kemba will just get past you regardless because he's just that good and that slippery. And 2 years later, he's like not playing and hasn't been effective. Remember when he got benched and then was out of the rotation? Stuff like that. It's like we've heard about small point guards forever, and we think that it's fixed with Chris Paul and Steph Curry being taking care of their bodies so well, but it full isn't for everyone.
It full isn't. It's fully not.
It's fully not.
Yeah, it's crazy. He was an all-star. He was an all-star 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, poor bastard.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a little bit of a break before we talk about the Rookie of the Year?
Sounds like a wonderful idea.
Hey, at 12 Don Yang. Do you like hearing the down low on all your NBA and basketball content?
Hey, at Will Conkin on Instagram and Twitter. Don't you mean the lowdown on NBA and basketball content?
No. I mean the down low, because that's our show, The Down Low,
where we give you the lowdown on everything NBA.
Check out The Down Low NBA on all your podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple, or even Google Podcasts.
Google has podcasts?
Yeah, I didn't even know that either. But now you know, so go and get it in your ears.
All right, we're back, and our next question is going to be, is the Rookie of the Year award still locked up for Evan Mobley? Because the entire season, literally since day one, the narrative has been that Evan Mobley has been far and away the best rookie. And whilst that hasn't really changed, his performance hasn't really changed, Josh Giddey has been a triple-double monster the last 6 weeks, and he looks like he's really kind of putting things together. And Scotty Barnes just continues to plug away, rock solid, pretty exciting, and the Raptors have kind of overcome their mid-season and early season morass and are charging up the standings. So I want to know if Mobley's still walking away with the hardware, or if is it a 3-man race currently?
In my opinion, I think it's a 2-man race, and I'll just give it to Mobley just because he's got the biggest role on the winningest team, and I think that's great for a rookie. Like, you're always going to get rookies who are going to be putting up shallow, hollow stats, like Giddey is in OKC, and it's not his fault. He's doing everything that he can in his opportunity, but for Evan Mobley to be an elite, good defensive big for a team that's one of the best defenses in the league and like a part of their identity, I'll give him the Brogdon Award there as opposed to the Joel Embiid Award.
And if the Cavs,
I thought you were going to say if the Bucks kept Brogdon, would they be title contenders?
If the Cavs, hypothetically, the Cavs, bottle it like I suggested that they might.
Is that a British term?
Yeah, I think so. I think I picked it up from British Instagram actually. Hypothetically, the Cavs bottle it and the Raptors continue to be one of the form teams in the league. If the Cavs slip down to 6-7 and the Raptors climb up to 4-5, does that change things?
I will reconsider, but Evan Mobley...
Because currently the Cavs are 2.5 games ahead of the Raptors. Which is not very much.
Evan Mobley is like the 3rd best player on that Cavs team.
Yeah. And Scotty Barnes will be the 4th best player on the...
Do you reckon?
Yeah, behind Siakam, Anunoby and Van Vliet, I think.
Yeah.
He's better than Gary Trent.
Yeah.
And that's really... those are the only 5 players that play any minutes.
Is he better than Gary Trent?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, yeah. I honestly... Toronto is one of the teams I've watched the least games.
Yeah, I watch every now and then just because I find them really interesting, just like arms.
Yeah.
And he's putting up about 15, 8, and 3.5 assists. He's a really fun, interesting player because he simultaneously seems really, really slow.
And
but then he just
bit goofy.
He also just gets where he wants to go all the time, and then he'll just like dunk all over you. Like he's kind of like meandering, and then all of a sudden he just yams it, and it's like, okay.
Well, who do you think's going to win the Rookie of the Year?
I still give inside track to Mobley, but I think it's an interesting hypothetical if
They fall off.
Yeah, if they fall off, or even if the records are comparable. You know, if Scotty Barnes puts together a bit of a run and the Cavs kind of like drop down and maybe they finish with the same record or around about. And Giddey's a bit of a dark horse because obviously you mentioned before that there's a possibility that he might develop some right hamstring soreness and sit for the final 10 or 15 games of the season. So that might put a dampener on it. But being in the West, he just continues to rack up Western Conference Rookie of the Month, like month after month, and he's putting up triple doubles.
But who's he going against? Jalen Green.
No, but in terms of accolades,
in
terms of Bleacher Report, NBA, Instagram.
Yeah, but Bleacher Report commenters don't have votes. If they did, we'd be worse off as a society. As society now is in a war.
We'd be fucked. Yeah, I think it's an interesting hypothetical, and Giddey remains that dark horse where if he puts up another 4 triple doubles over the last 20 games of the season in some like high leverage, you know, you might just say that in totality, maybe. Yeah,
I appreciate that, Dante. Any love for Cade Cunningham?
Nah.
Jonathan Kuminga?
Nah. I feel like I haven't heard from Cade Cunningham the whole season.
He has played well, but it's just, you know, when you miss the first month of the season and everyone just thinks you like were dead for the whole year, it's just a little bit unfortunate. He has played really well. It is meaningless. And honest to God, like I was watching a game today. I was watching a Pistons game. Having Marvin Bagley.
What game were you watching?
Detroit and Boston, just from a couple of days ago. But
you're tape dogging it. All-star break is no break for this man.
Just having Marvin Bagley, this is something that James Edwards III for The Athletic has written about. They don't have a lob threat until now. And Cade is just such a huge point guard coming down, and he'll chuck his shoulder in and bounce away. And every single player in the whole NBA has an option of tough shot or lob, and he's been the only guy who hasn't had that option until now. And Bagley had like a really nice like posterizer dunk on Grant Williams, which is like, oh
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Wow, you dunked on a 6'5" guy. Congrats.
Vice president of the Players Union.
What a bright future that young man has.
But yeah, that's not going to win it for you.
How old is Grant Williams? I reckon Grant Williams is 24.
I reckon he's 23.
He's 23.
Yeah.
He only just turned 23 as well.
I only just turned 24. When's his birthday?
In November.
Oh, just.
So is Chris Paul still the head of the union?
Nah.
Who is it?
Chris Paul's still...
Kyle Lowry.
Is it? No, it's not.
Yeah, Players Union President. CJ McCollum.
Yeah.
CJ McCollum was elected president late last year.
Elise McCollum's husband. Dude, Bismack Biyombo's on the committee.
Yeah. Get busy with it.
And Pau Gasol. And
All
Anthony Tolliver. All right.
Anthony Tolliver's still in the league?
Nah. Well, Pau Gasol's not in the league.
Yeah.
No, it's just like retired players. Like,
is Pau Gasol... Remember in like...
I know what you're going to say. When he was still going to teams and he's like, I love the sport. Don't get rid of me. And he was dog water.
No, do you remember... Am I like fucking imagining this? But remember when... You're playing like 2K12 and there's like a, courtside interview with Doris Burke about Pau Gasol, and she's like, he's a really intelligent guy. He and Kobe talk to each other in Spanish. He spends his off season working as a doctor, and somewhere in the back of my head, it's like melted in there that Pau Gasol is a doctor.
Nah.
Anyway, I'm just Googling this. Talk amongst yourselves.
Is Pau Gasol a doctor?
Never heard that before.
Yeah.
So what in the world is Spain's Pau Gasol doing, dreaming of a career in medicine to find a cure for AIDS? He's had visions of finding a cure for this disease since he was 11 years old. So he's not a doctor. No, maybe he is a doctor. Wait. He has... He has studied medicine.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was friend of the program Jackson Leach with a cameo.
Wow, okay, it's crazy. This is crazy. He dropped out of medical school so he could enter the NBA draft.
Oh, poor bastard.
So,
All right, let's move on to the final award that we're giving out, which is the biggest riser for a player. I feel like we just got like 2 themes and just applied it to every aspect of the game. But
yeah, but it's been fun.
I've got 3 names.
I've got 1 name.
Ooh.
I'm
Really?
jumping on this name.
So the final, not necessarily the final third's MVP, but the final third's biggest improvement.
Oh, I've taken it as a final thirds MVP.
Okay, who's the final third's MVP?
Devin Booker.
No Chris Paul.
No Chris Paul.
No
campaign.
No campaign.
So you don't even have a natural replacement for him at
Aaron
point.
Holiday.
Aaron
Alfred Payton.
Yeah.
You know, the last time I saw him, strung up by his testicles in Madison Square Garden.
Decapitated.
Dude, I'm not going to make that joke.
I know you've got some PTSD about the things that you've seen on Nick's Twitter directed towards Alfred Payton. How humanity can be so cruel to each other.
But to be fair, Tibbs was playing him. He was starting him, playing him 25 minutes a game, and now he's not playing for your team as the third guard when you don't have Chris Paul.
He's the third guard, and we traded for Aaron Holiday specifically to make him the fourth guard. We were like, we can't even
Why
have...
is he on the roster?
We can't even have Alfred Payton this close.
Oh, dude, I remember... If you remember Doris Burke telling you that Pau Gasol's a doctor, I remember... Bill Simmons got an exclusive All-Star Weekend interview with Victor Oladipo and Alfred Payton. 20 minutes, completely whitewashed.
When was this?
No, sorry, Zach Lowe. In the All-Star game. When
Zach Lowe in a whitewashed interview? You wouldn't read about it.
It would have been the 2014 All-Star game because they were rising stars.
Yeah, well, they're both on the Magic.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
I was trying to connect the dots between what relevance Oladipo and Payton had.
I don't know how you forget. And remember the game that went to like double overtime against Michael Carter-Williams versus Victor Oladipo, and they were the first opposition dudes to get triple doubles since Bird and Magic or something.
Yeah.
Hey, how'd
that work out?
But anyway, so Zach Lowe signed off, and he was like, "Oh, okay, thanks for coming, guys." They just absolutely said fucking nothing for 20 minutes, and he goes, I'm excited to see your careers blossom, and Elf, I hope you'll be throwing lobs to Victor for the next 10 years. Like, this is going to be like Stockton and Malone, like.
Jeez. That's a big whiff.
All right, so biggest riser, you've got Devin Booker. I can see that. One of my players is Steph Curry, so I'm not going to make fun of you.
I think just to do a little Devin Booker.
You don't have to.
No, I want to.
Oh, okay.
Believe me, I really want to. I think that he's obviously going to have to take on, at least for the next few weeks until campaign returns from injury, going to have to take on a pretty decent chunk of the playmaking responsibilities. His scoring responsibility isn't gonna decrease in any way, shape or form. Like, we're still going to be completely relying on him to be our leading scorer. So I think that he's going to rise to the challenge and increase his playmaking output, maintain his scoring averages, maintain his efficiency, and I'm optimistic that we're not going to see too much of a drop off from where we've been, and that we'll be able to secure the 1 seed. And if that happens, you really should have tip your hat. And following on from our discussion last week about is Devin Booker a legitimate All-NBA candidate, if Devin Booker can kind of like steer the ship for the next 6 weeks in Chris Paul's absence, then that's pretty fucking nailed on All-NBA vote, in my opinion. Who are your 3? Who are your 2? We don't need to talk about Steph.
Steph Curry for homerism reasons. Trae Young because I still believe in the Hawks, and if the Hawks are going to make a run, it's not going to be because John Collins went back to averaging 23 points. It's going to be because Trae, who did this just before the All-Star break and just after the deadline, was popping off for like 40 and 12, 30 and 15, like those sort of games. It's going to be because Trae Young is like, shit, I need to get my stuff together, otherwise I won't be able to revisit New York. But
did you know that John Collins is the second most efficient pick and roll finisher in the league?
No, I didn't.
Just a quick...
There was this really nice article about how Onyeka Okongwu is becoming like, the in vogue center for, he's a really good switcher, but he's also a great help defender and is like really good at protecting the rim. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I think it was Dan Devine for the Ringer who was like, now obviously he's coming off the bench for Clint Capella.
Get Clint Capella to Charlotte. Just fucking get him there.
2 things there. I remember we were doing a 4-man wave, and I wanted to mention the fact that they'd extended Clint Capella for 3 years, and you and Lucas were like, I don't want to talk about that. Here we are. A second thing is, this is, as Dan Devine pointed out, this wasn't my thing, but I really wish I can fucking find something like this. This is exactly what Clint Capella did to Dwight Howard. Now it's getting done to him with Onyeka Okongwu, where it's like he's clearly more efficient. We've got this guy who's getting paid for the next 3 years, and we sort of just have to like awkwardly go along as it is. How cool is that?
But isn't Capella expiring next year?
No, because he signed the extension.
We signed an extension last year. For 3 years.
It was going to be 1 year over Okongwu's rookie deal. So Okongwu's got this year and 2 more afterwards, and Capella's got 1 year after those 2 years. I could have just said 2 years and 3 years.
Yeah. Okay. So he signed through the end of 2025.
Yeah.
Which is 3 years away. You're right. That is craziness. Well, just trade him to Charlotte and be done with it.
And you and I have mocked like 5 centres to Charlotte.
Well, if we're going to talk about Rashawn Holmes in a little bit, then talk again about Charlotte.
But my pick for the biggest riser player is Tyrese Haliburton. We saw him the other day, like 19 points and 16 assists. And if, every single player and their mum has a strained hamstring for the rest of the season, it's just going to be Haliburton going out there doing awesome things.
Yeah. Maybe. You just might be right.
All right, should we move on to a little bit of news before we wrap up?
Yeah, that sounds like a wonderful idea.
Which, we'll start off with the Kings, but a little bit of BTS. How many of these do you want to talk about?
2.
Good.
Yeah, we know which 2. We know
All
which
right,
2.
So, James Wiseman could return first. The Sacramento Kings are likely to trade Rashawn Holmes this off-season, coming of Jason Anderson of the Sacramento Bee. They wanted to trade in this trade deadline after they got Domantas Sabonis. Even though they had 2 days in the bag, they couldn't complete a deal. So now it's just a little bit awkward with Rashawn Holmes. But what do you think about Holmes getting traded in the off-season?
You know what I love, just as an organisational way to do things? My laptop is like doing that thing again. Wow, that doesn't look good, does it? It looks pretty bad.
Maybe save the recording.
I can't even see the...
Oh, man.
Wow.
Or maybe just stop recording and then save it once it's back to normal. Fuck, man.
What the fuck is going Okay, so we're back from some minor tech difficulty where it looked like my laptop was maybe going to die. For all those wondering, I did save my thesis project on NVivo, and I did back it up to Google Drive a few days ago, so it's not going to be catastrophic for my postgraduate qualifications if the laptop does die. We also saved the recording of the podcast, so we're completely sweet. We're playing with house money. What I was going to say on Rashawn Holmes before the tech difficulties is, as an organizational philosophy, I love signing someone to a 4-year extension and then 8 months later trying to trade them. That's to me, that is the sign of good process organizationally. Especially when, it's the fucking Kings, man. Like, if you really wanted Sabonis that badly, you probably could have got him before you signed Rashawn Holmes to the contract. Now you've just completely devalued Rashawn Holmes when he was actually a really valuable asset a year ago. If you had decided to move on from him, you would have got significant return, even in the off-season. Sign and trade, do something. Now you've just made Rashawn Holmes a backup center again, and no one's trading anything substantial for him. So that's terrible. Get him to Charlotte. If you can't get him to Charlotte, get him to Toronto. Toronto, who's crying out for for a decent center, and he just fits with the arms mentality in Toronto. Like, imagine him as the 5, like someone who's not amazing defensively, but he's fine, and offensively just like a fucking elite interior short mid scorer. Love that. Lob threat. Just get him there. Just get him out of... He deserves so much better.
Yeah. But if you do want to trade him this off-season, he's probably 3rd in the pecking order behind Miles Turner and Christian Wood.
I think he's 2nd, because I think Christian Wood has proven that he is actually a bit of bit of empty calories kind of operator.
Yeah. But, I mean, look, you've got teams stupid like the Kings. Maybe there's a team out there who doesn't see it as empty calories.
I was thinking this maybe like half an hour ago whilst during the pod, but I just wish it was kind of like 2005 again, when there was like roughly 40% of the league might do something fucking crazy at any moment. Like might just trade your all-star and a young player for like a 34-year-old legend, like shit like that. Teams are too smart, too measured, too considered. There's too much information going around. I kind of just wish it was like the Wild West days, where someone would be like, "We're giving you 3 first-round picks for Christian Wood," you know.
All right, let's move on to the next piece of news, which a source close to the situation between the Lakers and LeBron James.
You can just say that it's Rich Paul.
Yeah. Says that, quote, "It looks like the early days of war," unquote, coming from Bill Oram of The Athletic.
That is truly some absolutely fantastic word choice, given the context of in which you'll be listening to this episode.
Yeah. It's a lot like LeBron before he left all of his last few places. And Rich Paul came back and said, no, it wasn't me. And it's like, okay, well, who was it? Like, you know, your secretary or like someone at Clutch Sports, or LeBron himself. But it was sort of like, you kind of saw this already, because when he was speaking with the media at the All-Star break, he pointed to how well Sam Presti had built that team, because someone was talking about where he wants to play next, and he goes, wherever Bronny plays, I'll go.
Well, and he also said, they're like, could you return to Cleveland? And he's like, yeah, I won't close the door on that.
Yeah.
Is that not like...
Well, yeah, just the fact that he credited Sam Presti for all the assets that he's accumulated, and then says, wherever my son goes, I'll play with him. If his son is the 5th overall pick, you're likely going to end up going to OKC, where they've got enough ammo to trade for any pick for the next 3 years, right? And then, you know, if Cleveland can get the pick, then bloody blah. And we have to see like whether Bronny is like a lottery pick or just a second rounder or something, which he's looking like a lottery pick. Is he?
I'm just on ESPN's college. ESPN's got him as the 43rd best player in the class of 2023, which is that he'll be playing his college season in 2023, probably eligible for the 2024 draft. They've given him 4 stars, ESPN has. He's a 6'3" combo guard. He has an offer from Kentucky. What if he's not good? What if he doesn't make the league?
But I think even if he's not good, to be the first father-son combo, would this be in any professional sport?
But what if yeah, probably.
Like outside like some weird Olympic sport.
Maybe baseball, because baseball players play for like 25 years.
Yeah.
What if he's not good, like he's not an NBA player, and then the pitch is like, get LeBron if you get
Take
Bronny,
this,
but LeBron is like 43 and he's like not.
Yeah.
Mate, do you want a 43-year-old LeBron? LeBron's one of those players who it's just hard to see it's hard to see him going out, like not going out on top.
Yeah.
Because how's LeBron going to just become a role player?
Well, like Steph Curry's going to be Kyle Korver when he's 41, right? Is LeBron going to be David West in Golden State, where he's just like running out of the high post and has just got like the most efficient bench unit in the league?
Probably not,
because that's not who he is.
So what's then the appeal of like a really old LeBron and like a maybe pretty average Bronny, other than just doing it for LeBron
and tickets? Like if you're the Cavs, the Lakers situation has just continually deteriorated, and you've got the 40th pick. Just draft him, use up 2 roster spots, sell the most tickets you've ever sold in your whole life, while the good players actually go and do good things, and then you've just got this father-son combo off the bench.
The other thing then also is like, what if Bronny's really good and some team drafts him and it's like, yeah, actually we're a young team with heaps of upside. We don't really want LeBron. It's like, we're not going to sign you.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe that's why he's trying to talk up Sam Presti, which is reading into it a lot, but you know, Sam Presti can just go and get it, and if Sam Presti's like, yeah, I'll sign LeBron wherever I go.
But it does seem like LeBron is going to leave the Lakers, because you mentioned that's exactly the playbook that's happening. Like a year and a half out from when he can leave, like a bit of animosity starts bubbling up.
For a problem he caused with Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, it's like, come on, take some responsibility. Like, nothing happens without your input, and it was obvious. It's been obvious that this wasn't something where management came to you and said, "Hey, what about Russ?" And you were like, "Yeah." Obviously, you've done that collaboratively. You have been the one that stumped for Russ as well. You know, you've made questionable GM decisions throughout your entire career. You've accrued the maximum level of power it's possible for an athlete to have inside the organization. Consistently refused to take any responsibility for those things. Scapegoated coaches, GMs, everyone along the way. It's all textbook LeBron. But considering how ever since I'm sitting on the floor in Spearwood in WA 8 months ago, recording an episode about how they just traded for Russ Westbrook and they fucked everything up. It's been obvious to most people that there was going to be no real way of turning it around once you walk down that corridor, you got to follow it to the end. You can't turn around. So how can this situation be rectified? It probably can't. So it looks clear that this is the opening skirmish in what's going to ultimately end up with him expiring next year and not re-signing.
Yeah, well, also the greatest player of all time.
Yeah.
It just happens to have all these other things with power.
Yeah, but he's pretty annoying. That's the thing. A few years ago, I was a big LeBron stan, and I would vehemently argue his case as greatest of all time, but he just annoys me. He does a lot of stuff that I'm just like...
He annoys you when he's like on the other side of 30.
At least Michael Jordan was a bit of a larrikin, you know.
Look, I love a punt as much as the next bloke.
So he's got a drinking problem and he's always got a cigar.
The people's goat, Robert Sala.
That sounds like a good place to leave
that's
it.
the pod.
That is the pod.
Do you want to talk about the Wizards or not?
Nah.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, Dante, I'll speak to you next week. Peace. We were over the moon when we first heard that the NBA was going to be televised on Australian free-to-air TV in the 2019-20 season. It didn't exactly go swimmingly, with the nasty cough halting the season and games getting cancelled left, right and centre, but it was a huge step and an exciting one for basketball fans all across the country.
Better yet, it wasn't a commercial channel cashing in on some basketball nerds like us. It was SBS, one of our public broadcasters. Unfortunately, the NBA wasn't the only thing SBS was pushing last season. They also ran advertisements from Sportsbet, Ladbrokes, Bet365, BetEasy, and Neds, some of the biggest sports betting companies in Australia.
In a one step forwards, two steps backwards move, SBS has dropped the ball here. As a public broadcaster, SBS plays a key role in providing relevant, culturally appropriate health information to local communities. The last thing SBS should be doing is offering a platform for gambling companies during the most financially unstable time in recent memory.
This past year, men aged 18 to 24 made up 79% of new gambling account holders, with increased median spending and frequency of bets. This is the last thing we should be spending our money on given the financial uncertainty that comes with the pandemic. During COVID lockdowns, wagering companies spent more money on advertising and incentives to gamble, and it worked. SBS needs to hear from viewers that gambling ad revenue isn't worth the harm it causes. Call on the SBS chair, George Savitas, to put community health ahead of gambling revenue by signing the petition at www.endgamblingads.org.au/get gambling off SBS with hyphens in